All right, welcome to the third installment of the new Gutencast, the podcast of Guten Book Press. I am the owner and founder. I'm an author and a publisher. My name is Dr. Anthony Horvath. And tonight I don't have anyone to join me, which is all right because I wasn't falling apart. But in the future, I hope that we will have some more people join me. In the last episode, we talked about JFK, his first inaugural speech, and we had Mikey DeMercurio um, join us on that day. So I want to do just a little bit of introductions, and I'll kind of sprinkle this through so that it's not too boring. But um, basically, if you want to join me on this, I don't even have to know you. Um, Yeah, I'll send a message to us through our X account and just give a little spiel about why you would be interesting to talk with. If you have a book that you want to promote or some other project that you want to promote, as long as I don't think you're like a insane lunatic, we'll put you on the show. We'll give you 20 to 30 minutes, and depending on how it goes, we'll let you go a little bit longer. Um, and I have a variety of reasons for why I want to do that. But of course, if you know me, um, you can also be on the show. There's no reason why you can't. You can appear by through your face, or you can call in. I got my phone here. We can just put you on speaker, that kind of thing. But so that's one thing. If you want to be a guest on the show, uh, I'm happy to have some guests. Not that I don't mind talking. In fact, I can talk a lot and often do, and definitely can. And like for example, today I have plenty to say. In fact, there's no way I would be able to limit it to 90 minutes and do it justice. So I'm going to do 90 minutes in an injustice, and it'll just have to live. Well, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to sprinkle the introductions throughout. Because it is a new podcast, and I want to um, explain how it'll be different. But first, let's talk about the title of today's podcast and the inspiration for it. The title is basically our do rat experiments help us understand uh, humans and human behavior, um, and can we extrapolate from what we learn about the sociology of rats to the sociology of humanity. And that, I don't know if maybe you've thought about that, maybe you haven't. Um, I have thought about it a lot, and I'll just tell you right up front, I don't like the idea. I think it's a bad idea. It's a recipe for madness, and the fact that to the degree that we dodged the bullet of having this concept applied to us, it was really fortunate. Just where it's lucky, we're lucky that people did not get into power who really had this viewpoint, but it was so close. And we'll talk about that maybe. Like I said, I could talk about this for quite a bit. But the reason why we're asking the question, or one of the reasons, the connection is because this is um, this like concept of rats and humanity and whatnot that led to the publication of a book, and I happen to have it here. The title is Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. I'll just show it to you there, and you may have actually seen the movie, which uh, here's a scene from the movie. I don't have a fancy producer. It's just me. So you're going to have to bear with me here. Move my, oops, moving the wrong picture. That'll move me over. So this was a 1982 film, the Secret of Nim, which, uh, if you're as old as I am, you'll recognize. I watched this in elementary school. So there was a book and a movie. So as a publisher and an author, today's topic really checks all of my boxes. we've got we've got books, we got movie, we got philosophy, we got population controllers, who I don't like, and I've studied quite a bit. I've studied them almost as much as they've studied us. And we're going to talk about the experiments on rats that led to this book a little bit later in the podcast. But first, I want to start out, since I am an author and a publisher, and talk about the book right here. I suppose I can maybe move this back over, or maybe you don't want to see me. I mean, I wouldn't want to see me either. I'm watching the chat for anyone who has anything to say. So what was interesting when I decided last week that I was going to have this as my topic. We were originally going to have the presentation last night, and for all I know, maybe it would have been better, but last night was the inauguration, and I thought people's attention would be pretty well divided, and so I didn't want to compete with all that. So I'm doing it today. In the meantime, last week I decided to acquire the book, which I had never read the book. I'd seen the movie, and I also took the time to rewatch the movie. Now I had watched that movie in elementary school. That would have been 40 years ago. 40 years. 40 years. So, needless to say, my memory of the movie was not necessarily fresh. And it is interesting when you think about the things that a 10-year-old thinks that they remember. It's not usually very trustworthy. So it was good. It was good to watch it again, because in my recollection, in the movie, the rats were the bad guys, but in fact, only some of the rats were the bad guys in the movie. So maybe I should summarize in order to talk about the book and the movie, and then segue into the issue of the rats. Maybe I need to summarize the two. There is a problem, though. The book and the movie are so different that it's almost like having two different stories entirely. So maybe I'll summarize. I'll summarize the things that they had in common. So essentially, Mrs. Frisbee, and in the movie, it was Brisbee, which I'm very curious to know why they made that change. But the book is definitely Frisbee. I looked at it several times. Frisbee. I don't know why they made that change. Anyway, Mrs. Frisbee's youngest son, Timmy, Tiny Tim, just Tim, I guess, is ill, and the timing is bad because it's near the springtime. And did I mention that they're mice? I should have mentioned that. We have a nice picture of her right there on the right side of the screen. Look at that big eye. Who could be mad at that sweet little thing? At any rate, I digress. It's getting close to moving day. She lives in a farm field. The farmers are going to be plowing the field, and it's time for them to move into the woodland so that they don't get plowed under. But Timmy is sick, so she decides to go see Mr. Ages, another mouse who has medical training apparently, and he gives her some medicine for Timmy, and she brings it back. But the problem is part of the um, what the doctor tells her to do is Timmy is not should not go outside. He's already got pneumonia, and apparently going outside is going to kill him at this point. So she can't participate in moving day and without killing Timmy. So her choice is either um, leave Timmy to die and save the rest of the family, or what? Right? That's the problem. That's the issue that she has. So um, circumstances arise where she ends up being brought by a crow to a wise owl, and the wise owl says, "Well, gee, your problem's pretty easy to solve. Actually, all you need to do is have the rats pick up your house, which is a cinder block, and carry it to the lee of the stone. In other words, an area where the farmer is not going to plow." Well, uh, Mrs. Frisbee Brisby knows about the rats, but she's kept her distance. She doesn't know much about them, and she's liked it that way. But she wants to save her son, so she goes to the rats. She's blocked at the door. That's what this picture is here. Oops. That's the guard. Brutus, as I recall. Isn't that a scary looking guy? Yeah. So Brutus is not going to let her pass. But another rat comes by named Justin, and she introduces herself. She's Mrs. Brisby, and he's like, Jonathan Brisby, Mrs. Jonathan Brisby, and that changes everything because apparently the rats know her husband, who is recently deceased. I know you were wondering where the man was in this whole story, and he's dead. Okay. You were probably thinking the worst. He was out with his buddies having some beer, maybe golfing. Maybe who knows? No, he's dead. Okay. He's got probably the best excuse in the world. I don't know if it would work with my wife. Yeah, it would. It would. I'm just teasing. She's not going to ever see this anyway. What was I saying? Oh, um, I'm summarizing the whole story. Did I mention that there's spoilers? I guess I should have said something about that. That in my description here, there's some spoilers. So I can't be helped. If you don't want spoilers, then I guess you're just gonna have to pause this and maybe jump ahead 30 minutes, maybe. Um, that should do it pretty safely. Anyway, so she goes to the rats. They are fond of her late husband, and they agree to help her. And the problem in all this is there's this cat named Dragon. And Dragon is the cat that killed her husband, actually. And fortunately, the rats have found a way to, with Mr. Ages, who is a mouse, by the way. Um, the rats, with the help of Mr. Ages and his sleeping potion, have found a way to knock the cat out so that they can run their operations. And there's a little bit of chaos. The plan doesn't quite go the way it's supposed to. The way plans never do, but it actually works out for the best because Mrs. Brisby gets some information that will save the life of the rats because she overhears that the doctors of NIM are on their way to come and fetch the rats, so they have to accelerate things, which they do. And after the normal bumps in the road that plans often take, they are able to escape to their rat utopia after moving Mrs. Brisby's house into the lee of the stone. And they don't have to even worry about leaving the farm because the they now are in a spot the farmer's never going to mess with anyway. And they all live happily ever after, presumably, except for a couple of rats that don't make it, don't quite make it. They We are led to believe that they died valiantly in defense of the colony, and so that's the story in a nutshell. And so there's a couple now. If we just sort of compare um, the the book with the movie, some really big differences. Well, for one thing, in the movie, there's like this supernatural overtone to it, which I I just don't know why it's there. Like there's no paranormal aspects to the book whatsoever. Robert O'Brien, that's the pen name. I forget his real name. Um, almost has the exact opposite. It's almost parochial the way he describes the life here of these rats and whatnot. Um, Nothing mystical, but the I'm actually gonna avoid giving away some of the spoilers. Excuse me. Just gonna adjust this window here. There we go. um, and I mean, I think I know why they've done it. Because the book, as written, maybe is not suited to be. Doesn't have enough content, perhaps, to be a full length movie, perhaps. So to bring in these mystical elements, I shouldn't call them supernatural. We'll call them mystical. Um, was maybe seen to be necessary. Also, they have a couple of the crow gets a lot more attention, and that's because the crow is voiced by Dom DeLuise, and I suppose if you wanted somebody like that to be part of your movie, you needed to give him a little bit more than a few lines, which is a lot more than he had in the book. In the end, I would have to say that you almost they're almost so different because of the introduction, the emphasis on the crow, Dom DeLuise's voice, and these mystical elements, and the fact that in the book, all of the rats that we're dealing with are basically the good guys, but in the movie, some of the rats are the bad guys. And interestingly, too, this is also pretty interesting. In the movie, the uh, the doctors of Nim are presented um, in the movie. They're still the bad guys. They are to be avoided. They're not that in the book they still want to avoid them, but for different reasons. In the book, the rats credit the doctors of Nim with helping them to become intelligent, with helping them learn how to read. So it kind of raises that the age old question of what's better, the book or the movie. And I I would say in this case they're so different. You can't even really compare them. I mean, they're just so different. You may as well not even ask that question. The book is good as it is. The movie is good for what it is. As an adaptation of the book, I think you'd have to be disappointed. And that's been my experience in general. Although the deviation from the book was, I don't know, maybe it's not that severe, but it was enough. It was jarring. It was jarring, the differences, we'll say. Um, I'm trying to think here. Has there ever been a movie that I thought was better, as good or better than the book? Only one. Black Hawk Down. Did not like the book. Book was a disappointment. Movie was quite good. Liked the movie. Maybe if I thought about it some more, I'd come up with some things. In my household, raising my kids, the rule was always before we saw a movie based on a book, we would read the book first. People would have to read the book first. And I'm not sure how true we held to that, but to the degree that we were, and I was able to have the kids abide by it, I think they probably saw the wisdom of it. And you know, yeah, suddenly the Harry Potter series comes into my mind. Yeah, I think even there, the movies were okay, but I still like the books just a lot better. If you want in the comments, you can put your thoughts about that whole question. This would be if I could have had someone to talk with today, I'd ask them. I say, hey, do you think there was any case where the movie was better than the book? But since it's just me, we're just gonna have to have you put it in the comments. So one of the things that caught my attention on this is the NIM part of it, because like I knew about this book I knew about the movie for sure for a long time, and it was only many years later in the course of doing other research where I was like, NIMH, where have I heard that before? I was like, oh my goodness, right, NIM, the National Institute of Medical Health, I believe, mental health, right here. Yeah, and so I mean, those people must be great, right? Love how could such people be bad? But they are the bad guys in the movie for sure. And that actually seems kind of fitting in my worldview, actually. So as we segue into that, um, let me give you another explanation for why I'm even having a conversation like this. So we had yesterday an inauguration of a new president. There is so much to talk about. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you are on. The amount of things that we can say about the fallout of that, we could speak for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours about it. And I'm sure that there are podcasts doing that right now. And it's not that I don't have things to say. I certainly have, absolutely do. Boy, I could be one of those persons filling hours and hours and hours. But for this podcast, uh, one of the things that I want to be different about it is that it's not tied so inextricably to current events. Podcasts often, that's all they're about. Not all of them. I said often, and it's understandable, right? Especially if they have a podcast that's 5 days a week, they need content, and in our day and age, every day has so many things going on in current events that the content almost presents itself. But that same paradigm uh, locks you into talking about whatever's going on. That's what you're at. Your hand is forced. Your mind is forced. The things that you're thinking about are the exact same things that everybody else is thinking about, and you're almost in a prison. You're in a prison of today's zeitgeist, and um, I don't like it. I don't want to be bound up with thinking about only the things that are on the bubble, the things that everybody else is already aware of. So, if this podcast is going to endeavor as much as possible to come up with old things that are still relevant. Hopefully, presumably they're always going to be irrelevant, but stuff that maybe we've forgotten about or we've maybe not really appreciated the impact they left on us today, the ripple effect that they may have had, that led us to where we are now. 'Cause I think we should know those things, and in my own daily life and my readings and research, I favor those things as much as anything. And today, what we're talking about with these rats of Calhoun, is a perfect example of something from the past that had ripple effects that we're still dealing with today. And I bet no one's really thought about it. If you're like me, I shouldn't say that because I've known about this and think about this kind of stuff fairly often. But still, I had not really thought about watching the movie for probably 30 years. So but this left a mark, not just the book, but like the source. So let's talk about the source just a little bit. I'm gonna pull this over here. I don't want to. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll get rid of my ugly head. Sorry, mom. Yeah, I know you don't want me to think of. Oops. Come on. Just trying to move over the window here. Here we go. That's good enough. Okay. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of this to set the stage a little bit. I thought about I could possibly end up showing a video that I thought was real useful too. The video is in the description, and this article is also in the description. I'm going to talk about these things a little bit and maybe say some things that are provocative that you might not even believe. um, but I submit these articles, and that YouTube video is corroboration for that. So, just reading here. The 1982 animated film, The Secret of Nim. The book was actually 72, I believe. Um, yeah, I already gave the description. What grounds this story in reality are the experiments done on the rats in the National Institute of Mental Health, which exists both in the film and the real world. The research was conducted by Dr. John Calhoun. So I wonder if there's a picture in this. I don't remember. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. So what Calhoun did was he tried to create rat utopian universes and utopias for mice as well. He removed all predators. They didn't have to worry about diseases. They had as much food as they could possibly want. There was no throttling of the food supply whatsoever, and the rats were just allowed to breed. And the in this perfect environment, in this perfect environment, the result was as the rats multiplied, the population density of the rats increased, obviously, and the result was not a lot of happy rats. It was a lot of very angry, depressed rats, killing each other, eating each other, getting sulky, and becoming loners, and choosing ultimately not to breed. In fact, I believe I read that when some of the mice experiments, and it probably was true, the rat experiments too, that when they introduced uh, rodents that had not been part of the experiments, the rodents that were, they still the ones in the experiment still wouldn't breed. They just were not willing to get frisky anymore, and so these utopian universes imploded. This experiment set of experiments couldn't have been done at a worse time because see if there's a yeah we'll go back to During this period, this would have been in the. Did he actually give it a date? In the 60s. It's not critical. We could look it up a little bit later. Excuse me. So here's the short story. In the 40s and the 50s, there became an awareness of a problem, or a lot of talking about a problem, the problem of overpopulation. And I'm gonna put my face back up front here. There we go. And when I say there was focus on this, I mean they were talking about overpopulation with such seriousness that there were people who were actively searching out ways to reduce the human population radically. Um, Crazy stuff that you wouldn't even believe, but stuff that maybe you've heard about, like compulsory sterilization, for example. And there was an obvious eugenic element to that, because if you're going to sterilize anyone in the population, who exactly you're going to sterilize? Obviously, it was going to be the people who had less to offer society and posterity, right? And so, in this context, there was a famous court case. Three generations of imbeciles is enough. If you remember hearing about that one, which made it basically legal for states to sterilize people without their consent, and all the way up until 1980, actually, it was the state of California, I believe, was the last state to get rid of compulsory sterilization. At any rate, setting aside the eugenic element, uh, there was great concern and a lot of foaming at the mouth that if they did not curb the size of the population ASAP, everything was just going to end. It was just going to, we're going to be toast. And the year that was often given for that was the year 2000. Paul Ehrlich, who had a book called The Population Bomb, which this is another video that I have in the, you know what, I'm going to give myself some room here to work. This was a good video that did a really good job talking about it all. Malthus, yeah. Paul Ehrlich, where are you, buddy? Right there. You're gonna hear some sound here. That's the cover of Population Explosion by Paul Ehrlich. And he basically says that in his like opening sentence, like the quest to feed the earth is over. Hold on a minute here. I have it right here. Yeah, it's not the same cover. Pretty close. Yeah, I'll just read right from it here. The first sentence. This is 1969. I can't read them. The battle to feed all of humanity is over. In the 1970s and 1980s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. At this late date, nothing can prevent a substantial increase in the world death rate. Yeah, so he's pretty pessimistic, and he's like, "Well, we got to get it going here. We're gonna have to do some stuff." Let's see. Our position requires that we take immediate action at home and promote effective action worldwide. We must have population control at home, hopefully through changes in our value system but by compulsion if voluntary methods fail. Americans must also change their way of living. Yeah, of course. Um, and then it cannot be overemphasized, however, that no changes in behavior or technology can save us unless we can achieve control over the size of the human population. The birth rate must be brought into balance with the death rate, or mankind will breed itself into oblivion. We can no longer afford merely to treat the symptoms of the cancer of population growth. The cancer itself must be cut out. Paul Ehrlich, The Population Bomb. 69. Right about when Calhoun's experiments were being carried out and the results being disseminated, which in their world was a real asset because they didn't really have experiments. They didn't. They all present themselves as being like totally based on science, all evidence based. This whole group of people, in fact, like if we could just imagine them sitting in their academic offices, crunching numbers and thinking about what they can do or what they will do to society. It's all abstract, it's all hypothetical, and they rarely are going to get their hands dirty with the actual business of trying to come up with some sort of experimental evidence for their claims. But Calhoun's experiments provided that because what happened in just about every case, I believe it was all of them. I get don't hold me to that, but all of the universes of utopian rodents, whether it was rats or mice, they all imploded. Their populations shot up, they blew up, and then they crashed, and the people were just the people. Oh my gosh, what did I? Excuse me. Apologize for that. Wow, that was embarrassing. The rodents just sort of sulked around and the population collapsed. And this was the evidence. This was the proof that a densely populated group of creatures was ill and sick and irredeemable. Like you're lost at that point. And that was the scientific basis. And so one of the things I like about this video, which I linked in the description here, um, he does a really good job of showing how this was that Soylent Green. It looks like a scene from Soylent Green. Another example, right? These are the rat experiments. Um, you should watch this video if you doubt me on this. So they didn't really have a scientific basis for saying that that population was bad, except for sort of mathematical jots and algorithms or whatever, showing that there wasn't enough food to feed all these people, not enough resources. And what's ironic is at the very same time as Calhoun and Ehrlich and all the rest were talking about how there was just no way we could feed all of humanity, no matter what kind of technology that we had. There was a guy named Norman Borlaug who was tweaking corn to make it so that you could grow more corn per acre. And Borlaug, Borlaug, I believe, uh, saved so many people. He saved millions. He's like, oh yeah, we'll just father of the Green Revolution. There it is. Credited with saving. We'll go back to the where'd it go? Credited with saving over 1 billion people worldwide from starvation. So at the very moment, you've got Paul Ehrlich saying the battle to feed humanity is over. You've got people, actual scientists, people who don't have some sort of itch to manage populations, going out, doing the hard work, actually finding ways to feed billions of people. So this does raise some, I think, some questions, some issues. Like, there's no question that these rat utopias, if we go back to here just to have something to look at, there's no question that these rat utopias turned into horrible dystopias of absolutely miserable rats, who couldn't even find the energy or compunction to get frisky anymore. Yeah, so that doesn't seem good. So we have to ask ourselves, I think a really critical question is, I mean, a basic question: to what degree do rats compare to humans? So yeah, there's some certain biological similarities, right? We can run certain experiments on for diseases and vaccines, maybe, and stuff. I'm getting a text, maybe it's from a viewer. So let me. Yeah, I have received hate mail. It was inevitable. So that's what happens when your viewers have your number. I'm gonna hear about it now. Anyway, so there's an assumption here, and there's an assumption that I don't share. Well, there's a number of assumptions, right? And one of them is that just because we are mammals together, that we are evolutionarily related, that somehow the consciousness of a rat is going to somehow translate into the consciousness of a human. Oh boy! So now I'm getting texts. Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh Lord! Oh no! All my viewers are now texting me. This is horrible. I need more viewers, quick. You guys are throwing me off my game, which is very good, by the way. I'll just mention. Um, I don't believe that we're evolutionary cousins to the rat, and so that alone breaks the chain. That alone is going to be the the thing that puts the lie to this idea that we can extrapolate from a rat colony to a human colony. But having said that, yes, I am drinking whiskey. It's almost gone. Having said that, I don't think you can deny that if you put people together in close proximity, there are going to be different dynamics that emerge. So, in saying what I'm saying, I'm not necessarily discrediting the idea that population density in itself is not going to bring up problems or raise issues or whatever, but the human capacity, um humans are just, they're just different. They're not the same as rats. And even if you have certain kinds of trends that arise, one of the things that humans have that most other creatures do not have is the ability to use their minds to adapt to new circumstances and to find a way to be content, um, that's not based on just having food, can I say sex, eh, or warm living environments, right? That is not the whole sum of the human existence. You might say, if you are Darwinian, that the whole point of an organism, if you're like Richard Dawkins, is to spread its genes. It is pretty clear and pretty obvious that for humans, that is not enough. In fact, I think it's true. It'd be the case that if you put people into a room and said, okay, you can have as much intercourse as you like with the 3,000 people in the room, and here's all the food that you might want, and here's all of your needs have been met, that environment is going to turn ugly and turn ugly quick. For one thing, because you cannot fit 3,000 people in a room, just to clarify. And I'm reminded of that scene in The Matrix. I actually think about this so often. I should have this ready to go sometime. But maybe you remember it. Is where the robots what's his name? Smith, Agent Smith. They're talking to Neo about all the different Matrices universe incarnations that they've had, and how they initially had utopian ones for the humans, and the humans were actually miserable. It was the ones where there was chaos and suffering and struggle. Those were the ones where humans actually ended up thriving. And it speaks to the fact that the thing that sets humans, one of the things, important things that sets humans apart from the animal kingdom, is that we are motivated by meaning and purpose and having goals and achievements. Oh my goodness. Oh, bless your heart. Oh boy. Oh, I am I am loved. This proves everything that I've been saying. Exactly. Fellowship and whiskey, practically on demand. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, some random person on the internet. I've just been topped up. Now, I would contend that if you put thousands of people into a somewhat cramped environment, but you gave them meaning and purpose, they would thrive. I don't think has to be clear again that the dynamics of population density, yeah, there are things that are going to emerge, things that we have to wrestle with, and that we wouldn't have to otherwise. For example, I mean, just simply, right? So, our poop, right? If you got all that poop, that's a problem. If you got the poop of 3,000 people to deal with versus the poop of only 3 people, that makes a difference in on how you structure things. I mean, I get that, but if you give them meaning and purpose, the people are going to be just fine. And I don't know of a way to give a rat meaning and purpose. If you know a way, feel free to put it in the comments. I'll take it. Um, I have some familiarity with rats since I live on a farm, and to my knowledge, I have not yet discovered any of them trying to do experiments on gravity or figuring out how to maximize the yield of an acre of corn or anything like that, or trying to raise a family and launch them into hopefully a happy and successful life that they're proud of. None of these things have ever been observed by me in regards to rats or rabbits or chickens. I don't have cows, but I'm pretty sure if I did, it'd be the exact same thing. So that being said, then um, to what weight can we really give these rat experiments when we think about designing our communities? I would say not very much at all. Uh, in fact, I would go the exact opposite direction. In fact, I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit beyond what I wanted to say. But like, if anything, the rat experiments actually expose the dangers of central planning. So remember, in the John Calhoun's experiments, he, the wise, great, omnipotent, all-knowing scientist, presumed to know exactly what all of the rats would want. He presumed to know what they needed. He knew how to make a rat happy, even if the rats themselves had no idea how to be happy. He was able to provide it. And yet, in all of his great, practically almost godlike omniscience, all of his communities, all of his utopias collapse. They all turn into dystopias of the worst sort. And that's exactly what that's I think a very good potential insight into the mind of the people like Paul Ehrlich, the population bomb guy. I showed you that. These are the central planners, the wannabe central planners. And if we look at places in the world where central planners have had a lot more ability to create their utopias, it has not been any better. And I hate to make it necessarily explicitly political, but why should this be considered political? It's just a fact that the Bolsheviks with Lenin and Stalin, perfect societies? I think not. Were people happy? No. People were dead. Big difference. And the people who were left were often purged, and then the remainder of those were often purged as well. You had Pol Pot in Cambodia. Same thing, going to create a perfect society under progressive principles. His words, complete and utter failure, 2 million dead. We got a book out of that and a movie also, The Killing Fields. Yeah, so maybe the problem isn't the population density. Maybe the problem is the central planners. Maybe the takeaway from these experiments is not that if you put about a bunch of rats together and force them into these close environments and give them all that they need, they're gonna die. Maybe it's, hey, maybe you shouldn't think that you know everything that a rat wants. Maybe you should just let the rats be fine all on their own and determine their own affairs. Now, as someone who lives on a farm, we wouldn't want to let the rats have too much latitude, but I think you see what I'm saying here. And in a similar fashion, if we take that as the takeaway, then it's not the density of human populations of global populations or how overpopulation, we'll say. That's not the problem. The problem is the people who think that they know how to solve it. The problem is the people who say, well, we need compulsory measures. We need to cull the population. We need to compel certain people to get sterilized, for example. We need to do, boy, I don't know if I really want to take this in this direction, but I got the book right here. It'll take me half a second. So NSSM 200, the Kissinger report. This is it's transparent. What do you think about that? Does anyone else have a transparent book? Jeez, rookies. So what this is, it's an actual government report that was commissioned about 4 years after Paul Ehrlich's book, because he was not the only voice, and Calhoun was not the only person that was doing these things. And this is what I mean if we go back to the very beginning of the video about how close we were. We dodged a bullet because these people were they were slowly taking control of all the levers of power. So I'll just detail it real quick. So Paul Ehrlich wrote The Population Bomb. You have Calhoun, of course, we've talked about him, but there was all sorts of other people, and they got the ear of President Nixon, who created an actual government agency which still exists today, the Office of Population Affairs. And in 1972, Nixon he produced he commissioned a report. It's called the Rockefeller Report. John D. Rockefeller, I believe, was the one about all the things that we had to do to reduce the population right now, or we're all going to die. and that came out, I believe, in 72. And at the same time that Nixon was going along with entrenching this whole mindset into the federal bureaucracies, he commissioned a secret document. That's this one. That's this one right here. You can look it up. Get a good look. Pause it if you have to. And basically, it's a plan for the depopulation of the world, and it was secret, of course, right? Makes sense. Yeah, they didn't make that one public. The Rockefeller Commission report was public. It talked about a lot of the things that talked about a lot of the same things in the confidential report, but the confidential report made statements like no population has been able to reduce its size unless it had access to abortion on demand. That was not in the Rockefeller Commission report. And wherever you stand on the issue of abortion, the fact that there were federal government entities actually thinking about, should we be using abortion as a population control measure, I would say that that should be jarring to both sides, even if you're on the pro-choice side, because what they were saying in that document, what they were saying is, um, it's not about a woman's choice at all in that paradigm. It's how can we persuade women to have abortions who would otherwise want to keep their children. So that's the antithesis, right, of the modern pro-choice movement, right? So no matter where you stand on the abortion movement, to have a federal, a group of whoever made this document, Henry Kissinger was not the author, but he was like in charge of it. Say, you know what, if we're going to reduce the population, we've really got to get more people aborting their children. Yeah, that's not cool, I would say. So these were the people who were coming into power, and they continued to grow through the Carter administration. There was they got a lot of federal money for it, and I'm not gonna. The purpose of this is not to talk about that, although as you can tell, I could talk about that for quite a while. But in the 1980s, because Reagan came in, believe it or not, Republicans. Well, Nixon, right? He's a Republican. He's the one that commissioned the report. I should actually explain that. Nixon did not endorse the conclusions of NSSM 200 because he had this other little problem occur at the same time called his almost impeachment. And so he left the White House. He was replaced by Gerald Ford, who actually did sign the document saying, yeah, that all those policy ideas about MS and SSM 200, let's do it. So Gerald Ford actually enacted it. So it's not necessarily a Republican versus Democrat thing. Actually, in the 1970s, whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, you were okay. You were okay with this whole population control thing. So it's not necessarily a partisan thing. And Reagan came in, and he basically, it just wasn't a priority for him. It wasn't an emphasis for him. And you could say it was for political reasons or partisan reasons or whatnot. I don't think he was the culture warrior in this topic that you might think that maybe he was. It just wasn't a priority, and so they lost funding. And so if there's anything that I know about the population control type people, the people who are keen to enact these policies, the one thing that they all have in common is they don't work for free. They are very much for their cause. They are true believers, but unless you pay them, they're not going to do the work. And so since they were not getting the pay, they decided they weren't going to do the work. So in the 1980s, a lot of this fizzled out. But this is where the ripples come in. This is the ripple effect now. Because nonetheless, during the 70s, all those people who really embraced this vision, the vision of Paul Ehrlich and, hey, we've got to get population size under control. Those people stayed in government service. They went out into the universities. They taught kids this stuff. They still had the ideas and the principles and whatnot. And even if they lacked the government funding per se that would actually give them the ability to actually do things at a governmental level, they were still persuading people to do the things that would reduce the population in their mind. And so, boy, I feel like I need to get out another book, but I'm going to resist. Instead, I'm going to take a drink of this whiskey. Because the purpose is not necessarily to get into the population control thing per se, but rather to just call attention to this tension between whether or not humans have the right and the ability to determine their own future and the things that interest them and the things that they want that a rat just does not possess. And I think the problem is you have people, elites, who think they are in the position of Calhoun. They know more than us. They know what we want better than we do. They tell us what our interests are. They get really angry. They get so pissed when we vote against our own interests, right? You've heard them. They're the experts. They're the National Institute of Mental Health. They're the people in the white coats. How dare you have your own beliefs about what will make you happy, or what will bring you contentment? How dare they? I switched persons there, didn't I? How dare you say to yourself, you know what? I kind of like the idea of having 4 or 5 children. They would not want. They do not want you to have that view. And one of the things that really bothers me about the way that they operate is that since they don't have the levers of power, maybe I should just sort of reframe it here real quick. So again, here's Paul Ehrlich, 1969. He's got the ear of the president, Nixon, at the time. Tons of federal dollars are just flying into all of these programs to study different ways to politely coerce people to have less children so that they don't have to do the more draconian things. And God can only imagine what else they had in mind for us if they failed, right? So they developed a strategy, and this is the ripple effect. This is what we're living today. Oh, I should have got the I should have brought out. Give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Oh, let's see here. This won't take long. If I can't find it right away, then well, someone who's been calling attention to this quite a bit is Elon Musk. So I'll just put this in here real quick. Yeah, I don't. This is from 2022. What I should have done is I should have gotten ready. There was a couple recent posts where he was talking about how the replacement rate is dropped below, like it's like 1.7. I could do this as well. So he's really concerned about the population collapse. The thing is like even today, even right now, this is like 40 years later. This is 40 years after Well, 1969, right? So let's see, if we're 50 years. 50 years after these people said, "Holy crap, we've got to reduce the population, whether people like it or not." They set in motion certain policies and attitudes, which, because of the nature of the way that government works, the culture works, they just continue to perpetuate. They just go on and on and on. And unfortunately, we as individuals just sort of we absorb what we've learned, right? So this is like, if we go back to the secret of Nim now, the book, right? So here you have, this is 1982, right? You have a book that's in a movie. Sorry, movie is in 82. The book was, I believe, 72, as I said before. Um, you've got all these young people receiving this idea. The idea is that the inspiration for the idea was that there's too many people, and it inspired a book. And so now you have a thought planted in the mind, right? It's given to us when we're 8 years old. I was like 10 years old or whatever when this movie came out. I haven't quite done the math, something like that. And so now we've been carrying with us the seeds of a worldview from people who lived in the 1970s, who believed that the population needed to be radically reduced. And we have this idea unexamined, right? We don't know that the source of it. We don't know where it came from. We haven't decided if we like accept it or not. We It's an idea that comes to us without any kind of evaluation. We just absorb it. It becomes part of who we are, and then we pass it on to the next generation, not knowing that it could be an idea that's been transmitted by people that we really think suck. Like I really hate Paul Aaron. Like, really, but the guy really bothers me. Um, but what bothers me the most is that I might have views and attitudes that he managed to, with all of his other friends and whatnot, embed into the federal bureaucracy, and then they embedded through by transmission into maybe the Department of Education through curriculum or whatever. That I might have those same ideas. That I might have them right now, and I don't like that idea. Like, don't we all have this hope or belief that the things that we believe are the things we have thought through them on our own? We have reasoned through them on our own. They're ours. And we're only going to believe the things that we believe, that we've tested to make sure that they're good. We don't like the idea that actually the I'm going to guess that many people don't like the idea that actually their beliefs and attitudes might have been transmitted to them by people who are frankly asses. But actually they may have succeeded, right? Because here's this beloved book series. Well, it was a series because there were some sequels, but they're written by his kids. And transmitted to us. We received them when we were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13 without any idea where they came from. And now, as adults, we live with them as if they're own, and we tell our kids them. And if we took a second to figure out where they came from and the assumption that originally sorts them, we might vomit when we think about it. Like just as an example, just to make it real plain, I would bet that anyone who watches this thinks that the idea of compulsory sterilization, like 99% of the population, if say should we forcibly sterilize people that we don't think should be allowed to have children, 99% of us would say, wow, holy crap, that's like Nazi level stuff, right? We wouldn't do that. But the people who gave us these ideas, that's exactly the kind of things that they believed. So maybe we should be thinking a little bit more critically about the things that we believe and track them back. So it is take a pause here. There is a way to post questions or comments. Please do so. I will respond to them. I should say in perfect fairness that apart from the references to NIM, the National Institute of Mental Health, neither the book or the movie actually say a whole lot about population control per se. So, as a method to transmit noxious ideas to the next generation, I don't actually put a whole lot of stock in these books. They're pretty harmless, I think, from that point of view. In fact, I was really impressed when I read the book. And from the little research that I did on O'Brien, which is not his real name again, as I mentioned. Here, we'll put this over here so you can see it. So that was his real name, Robert Leslie Carroll Conley. No wonder he shortened it up. Who the heck can remember anything like that? Jeez. Anyway, he, to my understanding from reading some of the other articles, like including the one that was linked, he visited Calhoun's labs, so he may have had some attachment to the ideas, but in my estimation, they don't come out very clearly in the books. They're fairly innocent and innocuous from that point of view. And this is a guy who was born, as it says here, highlighting the wrong place, in New York, fairly dense environment, right? So he would have had every reason to emphasize that if he had wanted to. His book, I'm not talking about the movie, the book actually was really knowledgeable about the life on the farm, like the different things that farmers have to go through. It, I thought, in its own way, like the farmer's not the bad guy in the book. He's just a farmer. He's someone that everyone sort of has to. Someone, I keep anthropomorphizing just the way the book did, which I don't want to do. Um, the creatures don't necessarily sense any hatred from Fitzsimmons, the farmer in the book, and the book is actually pretty well grounded in real world realities of life on a farm in a way that the movie definitely is not. And I think in that respect, it's fairly innocent. So I don't necessarily feel like you need to be worried about handing off the book to like your 12-year-old nephew or something. It's not going to lead them to conclude that, oh, we need to get rid of all the people. So that's good, right? But it is interesting still that you have this connection, that there's nonetheless this ripple effect, that the very same inspiration for O'Brien was the inspiration for people like Henry Kissinger and his Kissinger report for depopulation of the globe, for Rockefeller and the Rockefeller Commission for the same idea. I mean, these are strange connections, and we've all inherited them. Almost everything that I've talked about so far happened before I was even born, right? Probably before, because of how old I am now. Holy crap, how old? Jeez, I'm old. Man, I'm really getting old. Because of how old I am, nonetheless, so much of this stuff, this was done before I was even imagined, right? Okay, I'll come back to your question in just a minute. The idea that we would still be perpetuating these ideas is really startling and scary for me. So the question in the chat, because I don't know if the chat's going to be in the saved viewable if you watch this later. The question is, does the NIMH actually stand for the National Institute of Mental Health? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. In the article that I posted in the description, this one here, I believe, says that the author actually visited the experiments. If not in this article, I believe I read it somewhere. So like, the two are definitely connected. Just trying to see if I can find that real quick. Here it is. The book was based off of direct observation of Calhoun's lab. So O'Brien visited these labs. So yeah, it's a very strange connection. I think that this is even happened. Like no, I like you could not have told me that a popular children's book was inspired by something as weird as this. So we're only about 13 minutes left here, so I'm gonna kind of wrap it up just a little bit, do a little bit of summary. First of all, again, as a reminder, if you know anyone who wants to be a guest on this show, even if I don't know them from Adam, point them in my direction, because I want to have other people on the show that we can talk with. I think that it would the different perspectives will be useful. Also, one of the things that I want to do, just as a reminder, is I don't want to be bound by current events. Like I don't want to spend all day talking about whatever happened in the news that day. I mean, that is like, I don't want to be trapped into the national conversation, whatever it is. There's so much things that have happened in the past that is worthy of our consideration, and topics like this are a perfect example of things that have had ripple effects that we're still coping with today that we don't even really know about, that we should talk about. So I want to talk about them too. Also, because I'm an author and a publisher, and because this is the podcast of the Guten Book Press, ultimately I want to sell some books. So, for example, I have not pitched a book yet, but this episode is brought to you by the two books by Sam Packin, Jesse Seed, and a Bed and Sheol, authors that we publish. An author that we publish. I hope that you will support this podcast by going out, buying his books on Amazon, and supporting him and me, so on and so forth. So I want to sell books, and I want to talk about ideas, and I don't want to be bound by current events. And I would take even a complete stranger on this show. In the chat, well, what would be the topic? Well, on my X account and on my Facebook account, I have been posting invitations to suggest topics, first of all, and I have also been posting the whatever I've decided to be the topic. So, if you know me on Facebook, you can propose things. Follow me on X. I really should have put before I sign off of this. I'll make sure that I put the X account for the Guten Book Press on here. So follow Guten Book Press on X, and then you will see when I open up for applications. And it doesn't even really matter what the topic is. anyone's welcome to join me and take 20 minutes. And if they have something to promote, they absolutely can. We'll give them a minute or two to promote it. Because basically, the thing is I publish a lot of authors. I have a lot of books that we publish, and it's just really hard to rise above the noise. And I believe that if we have these in-depth conversations and have the opportunity to talk about some of these books and movies and how they influence culture. And I'm not talking about like today's like books about today's current events, but books about things that have happened in the past or whatever. That hopefully that'll begin to raise awareness of the value of books in general and maybe get some sales. Because I really like sales. We need some sales. Please buy our books. Okay, so that pitch is over. I'm gonna go back to the topic now of talking about rats and humans a little bit. So, if you ask me, a rat is not a human. But if you also ask me, there are a group of people out there that basically think that maybe we're not rats. We are at minimum cows. We are cattle. We are to be herded. We are to be manipulated. We are to be tweaked. And they are the smart people. They're the ones who can decide for us what we want, what we like, what will make us happy, and keep society humming in a way that they think is to in their mind it's the superior way. The very last thing that they want us to do is make decisions on our own. I feel like I should say that as a basic premise, population density is going to raise issues, and that there are things that we could do that would be better for living together in a more complicated society, like from a population density point of view, like things like public transit. And I'm not going to take a hard position on this, but like as someone who's been to Europe, spent some time there, um, they've got these like super fast trains you can get on in France and get off in Germany, and you won't even pay anything more. You like the one ticket takes you just about everywhere. Uh, not granted, it's Europe, it's a smaller kind of area. I know it's large, but you could go through like 5 countries super quick. Mass transit, it has I'm just saying you could definitely propose some advantages to it. And what do we get here? We have Amtrak, which I'll mention again it's a government thing. It's like the central planners at work again, and they screw it up. They can't get it right. They get nothing right. But I digress. I think. Um, so like there are some things that we could do that could make the way that we live together a little bit better, or maybe even a lot better. We could have more sidewalks. Maybe we could have more trees, more parks, or whatever. I'm not dismissing that sort of thing because, in the realm of things, if you just let people sort of decide what to do, those are the kinds of things that people would decide to do. So to illustrate what I mean on that, I think a little bit more. Have you ever wondered like why it is that if you look at throughout the world, they tend to like really really resonate with American culture. They love our movies, they love our music. you know like people in India, people in China, if there were not like these constraints on their behavior, if there was not censorship or whatever, they would love our stuff. They would take everything that we do here in America and they would just do it. And they just love almost all of it. It's so funny, right? Um, and why is that? I think one of the reasons why is because, with caveats, of course, what we have in America is largely we have what people would do if they were allowed to do whatever they wanted, right? And that's why you have all these really cool things. Let me rephrase that, because I don't necessarily like embrace all of it. I don't necessarily endorse all of it, but like we have like professional football, and you have people, you have crazy music that some people apparently like. You got we look at the food that we eat, right? Like pizza. This is a great example of what I'm trying to illustrate. This is perfect. So pizza in Italy is not anything like pizza here in America. When I went to Europe, I was told that the pizza there was going to be phenomenal. And I remember I ate it and I was like, hmm, this is actually fairly disappointing. This was not good. Whatever it was not pizza. In other words, America takes the things that are good in the rest of the world and makes them better. like um like the hot dog, right? I mean, like culture, we're just, again, there are caveats. There are definitely caveats to what I'm saying. And the rest of the world looks at the things that we do and they're like, yeah, I like that. And they try to do whatever they do. And then there's often a lot of pushback in their own countries of traditionalists are like, well, that's like the breakdown of our own culture, whatever. It's very corrosive. But the point is, it's what people want to do. And so there's like, to me, the real distinction between the central planning of the Rats of Nim, John Calhoun's um experiments, and like the actual way to human satisfaction, I would say it's not that the rats were miserable because they had there was too many of them confined in the area. They were miserable because John Calhoun thought he knew everything about what a rat wanted out of life. And we have social engineers who feel that way about us. They think that they know everything that a human wants out of life. And they think that we are just originated from beasts, right? We're descended from the lately descended uh, amphibian from the ocean and just over billions of years. And so we're basically just the same as the rat, I guess. And so this gives them permission to treat us like mere animals, to be conditioned, to be manipulated, to be engineered, because they're the smart people, right? Actually, another book comes to my mind right now, which is really applicable to what I just said, but I'm not going to talk about it because I only have 1 minute left. It's The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis, which culminates in the abolition of man. It culminates in a class of people who are no longer human because they have presented themselves as superior to the rest of humanity. Yeah. Oh, another thought that comes to mind is to get a Brave New World, where the same kind of thing happens, and you have the wild man. If you remember a Brave New World, you got this perfect utopian society, but you've got this man who is allowed to live among the natives of this wild colony, and he comes in and he's like he hates this utopian society of a Brave New World. So this is actually a really good segue for me to finish this up. Um, what we have this tension, as it were, between the 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 fiction that we enjoy and the policies of our social engineers. The policies of our social engineers have been critiqued already very well by our authors, but we just really haven't listened to them, like C.S. Lewis and the Abolition of Man, right? In the Brave New World. I mean, they see what's happening or what could happen, and it's unfolding behind us. And unless and until we really come to terms with analyzing, knowing what we believe, knowing why we believe it, knowing where the belief comes from, it makes us vulnerable to the possibility that we are actually perpetuating the worldview of madmen. And I find that to be a very disturbing, dystopian idea. So thank you for watching. If you have watched this all the way through, I really appreciate it. I hope that you will like and follow and spread the word. We're going to have another episode tomorrow. I have not yet decided on the topic, but we'll decide soon. I will post it to my X account, which will be posted in the description of this broadcast shortly after I finish it up. Again, anyone who wants to be on the show, even if as long as they're not too insane, hey, we'll take them. We'll have good conversation. And in the end, I guess I'll just say, go buy a book. Start with Jesse Seed and Abed and Sheol, the quote sponsors of today's broadcast. Thanks again. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not bound to time. We have a couple of people watching. Any more questions? I'm sorry. I should have given a chance for people to post comments or questions. I will take comments or questions right now. Now I'll check my phone to see if I've got any harassing. It's kind of like how they say to get out of a depression or a funk, to help somebody else. When you help somebody else, you lift yourself up. I don't remember what I was saying at that time, so I don't know how it relates. Sorry. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm going to turn this off. Stop talking. Lord Almighty, my critics, I just can't handle it. All right. Thank you all for watching. We'll be here tomorrow night, same time, same place, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. See you then. Have a good one. All right. Now I have to figure out how to turn this off. Have a good one.